So I was trying to speed up and I couldn't give extra information in my last video. But in my last video, I was explaining how a pregnant girl had to wander through Lowell homeless. And that the only person that gave a fuck about trying to help this girl keep her baby or keep her baby alive was me. She literally had no option for an abortion or to raise this child. She was just fucked. Literally fucked. And the state didn't want to get involved either. Meanwhile, the baby daddy is scared in fucking Pennsylvania, and the sister in that family does want to get involved, but they don't know how to get a hold of her. So I had to be the mediator of all this. And like I said, she wanted to smoke K2 all the time. She was smoking K2 from 16 with this Gabi, because this Gabi was actually a K2 seller out of Lawrence. He ended up getting a kind of part-time ability to sell from Smoke Valley, but he wasn't trusted enough to go behind the counter and sell it or really be a salesman. He wasn't allowed to work for the store. He was only buying a bag trying to sell joints to the homeless people. It's kind of illegal. Kind of a little different than me opening boxes in the back, stocking the shelves, bringing customers into the store and showing them the merchandise out of a cardboard box that's behind the counter. When people try to rob you, you got to tell them to fuck off when it comes to K2. One other thing, I don't care, shoot me, fuck off. I don't care. I really don't. Because if they shoot me, they're really doing me a favor. I have been suffering for 25 fucking years. Nobody's gonna fucking scare me out of my job. Fuck no. And one of these days, somebody is gonna stab me, but I'm always ready for it to try to stop the situation. But this is the life I have to live, in pain, every single day without medical care. If somebody wants to try to shoot my head off, they're welcome to try, but it better be for a damn good reason because I am a sneaky bastard with my cameras and recorders. I'm also making it very difficult if you want to hurt me. But anyways, I also try to help out everybody, so you're really hurting somebody who's doing good for the community as well. So you'd be an idiot to really try to do anything to me. Plus, I don't believe in vindictive behavior, so that tit for tat shit doesn't go for me. So I'm really, I'm the last person that should ever be a target. But yet, there are some things like me being weak, skinny, talkative, honest, not willing to lie. Those things can get you into trouble. Believe it or not, being an honest individual can be difficult because there are times where you can't give no information, where you can't say yes or no. You can't do that because you would be either lying or somebody would get mad at you. So you have to say nothing and then they get mad at you anyways. So there's a whole bunch of that. But you have to be honest. You can't just lie because somebody wants you to. Like my mother and father would lie to cover their own asses. I don't do that. Nope. Lying is not okay, especially if there's somebody's life involved. I mean, that's just it. But see, also, people can be mistaken. You got to also know the difference from like giving your kid an overdose, not calling an ambulance, and then when your kid's speaking up in the doctor's office, lying through your teeth about the cause of it, and then never looking into it. Also, lying about your own drinking. Those are straight out lies. You know that you drank a bottle if you drank it. If you pick up a bottle and you drink it, you know you drank it. And you know your son in the program wasn't there to drink it. But my mother was willing to lie about that. Now, me as a child, oh yeah, every child has made a lie. I'm not going to say I'm some angel child. I lied just as much as any other child that was probably my age. I mean, probably less than most. I mean, Joey was a total, oh, he was a pathological liar. He lied about his father picking up dump trucks and stuff. I mean, that kid was terrible. There was a bunch of kids in the program that were out of control with the lies. So I would say I was above probably the 20% least lying kids. Even in the schools, I almost never got in trouble for lying. Actually, I didn't, not in high school or middle school. Before that, maybe. Yeah, I think I lied about a stolen toy when I was like 10 maybe, or when I was when I was in Texas. I think I tried to play with a kid's toy. He had a toy on the table. I was playing with it. They told me it was time for lunch. Instead of putting it down, I stuck it in my pocket. Now, I wasn't planning on bringing it home. I just wanted to keep playing with it. But when they asked me if I had it in my pocket, I ended up saying no. Then they found it in my pocket. Then they asked me if I stole it. I said no. They said, "Did you take this from the table and stick it in your pocket?" And I say no. Now that's all lies, except for the part I wasn't really trying to steal it. I was a little child who was playing with a toy and wanted to continue playing with a toy. I wasn't thinking I'll stick it in my pocket and bring it home at the time, but it is stealing. So I should have said yes, yes, and yes, and that's it. But there's a little more to these situations than people usually make out. And there's a lot of mistakes in life. I've seen people make a lot of mistakes. Like my father trying to get me to drive while he knows my legs and arms aren't working properly. I believe that was a mistake. He wasn't trying to endanger other people on purpose. He wasn't doing that. No, he really thought that everything would be safe and hunky-dory. But then again, he didn't look like he felt safe to have me drive with him. So there's a bunch of stuff weird going on with him. It's almost like he thought that if I drove, I might get in an accident, but he thought that that's somebody else's problem. Something like that. Now, I take it very seriously, other people's lives and health, and I will never drive until we have more answers. That's my opinion, and I've waited 15 fucking years to drive a car until we know more about this neurological disorder. It's really difficult to have spent so much money trying to figure out my father's and mother's mess, and it's going to take a lot more money and time. Time I don't think I have. But I wanted to mention that because in my last video I got cut off saying that I don't care about something I really do care about. Like, for instance, I do care that I sold K2 because I find that stuff to give cancer, and it's the devil in ways. It also made people a little loopy. There were certain individuals that used to do weird stuff. I don't know why that was. I wasn't a big smoker, so maybe that's the problem. I was never a big smoker. I also bought a lot of herbal stuff that wasn't K2 as well and put it in the bags. So that's something else I used to do is I would sell non K2 stuff and smoke it myself. You can still buy that stuff on Amazon. It's cigarette replacement stuff. People can't tell the difference from cigarette replacement and K2. Cigarette replacements for quitting smoking. It's a bunch of just non-toxic leaves. You shouldn't smoke that either, though. It doesn't get you high, though. There's a bunch of those. I also tried Salvia as a kid, only a couple times, and hated it. It made my seizures much worse. And because I took 4 tabs, that's 4 pills of cough medicine, and I tried it one more time, that was literally weird as fuck. I had wicked bad hallucinations, so that was interesting. Salvia is a hell of a hallucination drug. So I never use that again. But many, many, many hundreds of thousands of people smoke salvia. It's a diassociate hallucinogenic. And I was already, oh boy, did it make my stuff worse. There's a bunch of things that made it worse. Like, for instance, at age 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, I found out that caffeine makes me tired and calm, but also sends electrical charge to my neck and back. So it makes it harder for my body to move properly, makes it harder for that to happen, but it relaxes my mind or slows it down. And that's because the caffeine is a stimulant, so it helps me with the ADHD, but it makes my nervous system issue, the neurological disorder, much worse. So one thing gets better while the other thing gets worse. Like, here's another one. Things like a Xanax. I don't like Xanax. Ativan and Valium and things like that are better for me. The reason why is Xanax, all the benzos come with impulse control issues. So if you take like 2 milligrams of benzos, a lot of people steal or they get violent or angry. It works like alcohol. I'm not sure if you ever seen a drunk have problems with their impulses, but that's very common. Alcohol and benzos cause impulse control issues where you do stuff that you normally wouldn't do just because it was a thought and you acted on it. That's not good. So I don't like Xanax at all. I'll never take Xanax. Out of the whole benzo family, Ativan's for me because it's the one that works for the seizures best. And only at about 0.5 to 1 milligram is all I would need. That's all. I don't need no big giant dose for the first couple years. But right now, I'm trying to find one that's not one of those. That will be at the end of my life when we have this figured out. That's like from 10 years from now if I get this taken care of. But looks like I don't get that far. That was the plan 5 years ago. Now it looks like my kidneys are going to fail and I'm just going to die in the woods. That's the plan now. There is no plan. Now I'm just fucked. The DHHS is fucking up. My doctor's fucking up. My father and his new wife are playing games. I got fucking weird texts that just fucked up from my brother that they're like, this is your own fault that you were crippled as a child. All that shit that I yelled at you about your mother being crazy, I didn't mean a word of it. No, come on, your own son watched me get beat with a ruler. I come out of the damn room and he's crying, and I had to comfort him. I had to comfort my nephew about my beating. I had to tell him, it's okay that I get a ruler beating. It's okay. Just stop crying. It's okay. How about my crying? I mean, goddamn, I'm only 3 years older than this kid. I'm like 10 years old comforting, what, a 7 year old? Because no, I was probably 12 years old comforting a 9 year old because I just got hit with either a plastic or metal ruler. They had this really hard plastic one, and then there was also a metal one. And she didn't use the flat side, she used the thin side. And she just did it across the face sometimes. This is nothing to me either. The physical abuse is nothing. This is just the stuff that was witnessed by other people. This is just some of the crazy behavior that people witnessed. What I find concerning is the overdoses and the extra medications and the sickness all of a sudden on Halloween, and my mother's lying about mental illnesses and her trying to convince me that I was schizophrenic, all because I played with action figures, but I wouldn't go along with it, so she smacked me at the staircase. This is the type of stuff that I find crazy and hurtful still today, because those medical records are still getting me hurt today because they're fraudulent, they're made up, and they're my mother's fantasies. Not only that, I got serious harm done to my body because my mother thought playing doctor was okay. Oh, I'll give him a couple of these pills, and we'll give him a couple of these pills. Doctor, I want to give him these pills. No? Oh, I know best, doc. You give it to him, and we'll go to somebody else. Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. You give him these pills now. This is my mother speaking like that. That's how my mother spoke. Doc, you give my son these pills now. I don't care what you think. I know best for my son. You give me these pills to give to him now. And then if that doctor didn't listen, she'll go to another doctor and another doctor. She eventually found a doctor out of like 2 hour, 3 hour drive. Literally, that's how far. There was like 300 doctors closer than this doctor. But this one gave my mother whatever the fuck she wanted and never ever listened to me. Like, for instance, I was talking to this doctor about tics or this twitching that I had, and he just said, oh, we'll give you a medicine for that. Could be a side effect from the medication, so we'll give you more medication. Okay, I guess that's kind of normal. Well, how about when I told about my mother's storytelling? Well, she's telling stories about me. She's lying. She's making up stories. I never did that. I never said that. I don't. That's my swimming medal. Why are you stealing my swimming medals? Why are you making up stories about me? I'm bumping my shins in the stuff, and you want to make it self-harming. Why is everything a mental illness with you? But see, the psychiatrists eat this stuff up for candy. You mention a made up mental illness, and these psychiatrists want to run with it, especially if they're writing a book. And wouldn't you know that this doctor I'm speaking about actually put me in a book, chapter 6. I'm not even kidding. I am in a book. This doctor my mother brought me to, 3 hours from the home, while I'm living in programs, while she's beating me with rulers, while she's playing around with pills, while not telling this doctor anything about Westford. Did my mother go over all the things that were done to me, the lack of education, the beatings, the poisoning, the food poisoning, the overdose with the medications? Did she want to go into full detail on any of those really bad things that were still causing damage to my body, that were causing apparent symptoms that people could see? No, she didn't want to discuss that. She wanted to discuss something stupid. She wanted to make up, oh, I think that my son might be drinking alcohol. Why do you think that? I don't know. The level looks lower to me. I'm not sure. He might have done it. I'm not sure. Or, I think that he has some greed. I think that my son doesn't like me. Why do you think that? I think it's some attachment disorder. I think he has some hurt feelings to his biological mother, so it's causing some mental anguish, and then he's re-projecting that hate for his biological mother to me. He hates his biological mother, so he's getting really mad with me, I think. This is what my mother said. You know what the truth is? My mother was hurting me and I didn't like it. That's simple. If my mother stopped fucking giving me full bottles of Ipecac as a punishment, rulers to the face, fucking overdoses and not calling ambulances. If my mother stopped doing shit like that, I would have liked her more. But when you're beating somebody, when you're giving them evil looks, when you're smacking them, when you're sticking your nose and finger in their face, yelling at them for something they didn't even do, when you're making up stories about them, when you're lying about them, when you're making up fantasies about them, when you're hurting them with pills, medication, when you're going out of your way to find doctors who will listen to your nonsense, when this shit's going on, you don't like it. And I don't like it. So that's why my mother really did get me to be like, hey, stop it. You're crazy. Shut up. Stop be acting crazy, I used to tell her. Stop lying about me. Stop acting crazy. And then she would go and tell the doctor. See what I mean? I think he really does have a problem with his biological mother. Oh, I have a problem with my biological mother because my adopted mother keeps on poisoning me, smacking me, and doing crazy things to me. I don't even get an education. What do you think happened to me during those 18 months in New Mexico? Do you think it was some paradise? Do you think that fucking dirt field was a paradise? No, they said they were getting a pool. Oh, but that was 2 years, 5 years after I left. All right, that's right. How does that help me? Oh, yeah, that's right. I got the dirt lot. Oh, well, how about the other stuff they were talking about? Oh, they're going to build better housing quarters for the kids. Oh, that's great. But how does that help me exactly? Oh, no, I have to sleep on the floor and we only get a cabin. Would only consist of one living room, a dining room, and a couple kids' rooms where we're not allowed to actually sleep in except for from 5 to 6. What's the stupid? They said it's to make you more attached to your parents. So you got to fall asleep on a hard floor in that living room, was like a wood floor or something or tile. It's real hard. And then on top of that, then you get woken up at 5 a.m. to crawl to the bed and go to bed for some reason. And then from 5 to 6, you get to lay there. And then at 6 o'clock, they come back up to wake you up to go take a shower, brush your teeth, do all that. What the fuck is this nonsense having kids sleep on a hard floor for 18 months straight and they only get to use their bed for 1 hour in the morning? What the fuck type of game is that? How about the fucking staff waking us up in the middle of the night to go out in the middle of the woods playing flashlight tag really far from the building, really on this hill, because there's a cougar someplace and he wants to flush them out? What the fuck does he mean, flush them out? We didn't know. But he was arguing with the staff member about this, but he did it anyways. And he definitely brought a gun or a weapon. He had something that he brought with him. But then again, that probably was protocol up in that mountain. This is a cabin up in the mountains in New Mexico. This was a place called Villa Santa Maria. Now, when I Google it now, they have a bunch of new buildings and they got a pool. We knew a pool was coming in because we used to have these stakes we used to like to pull out of the ground and play with. We would play with like swords, do jousting with them, stuff like that. And the staff would yell at us, telling us that these stakes are for the pool when it finally comes. We would say, we're getting a pool, and they would say, no, 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 you're not getting a pool. It's going to be another couple years before the pool comes. And we're like, oh, oh, oh. But when you Google it now, there's like 3 new buildings, and there's a pool. But when we were there was only the cabin, the dirt lot, and the staff room, the staff office room. It was a staff office, and then there was this other room where they threw like Christmas parties that the staff used too. I'm not quite sure what those were for. We weren't allowed in them. Those 2 buildings we weren't allowed in. There was where they had the Christmas parties. That was, I guess, for the staff and the parents to meet in. They had the office for the people who worked there, and then they had the cabin, what was again a dining room that had a little fridge section cut out of it. For some reason, the fridge broke down a lot. And then if you went down the dining room, there was a hallway, but off the hallway, there was little strips of rooms. And then there was the living room. And there was only about, I would say, 10 rooms total, maybe 12. They were very small. They had to compact this all into a very small space. And this was not a really up-to-date cabin either. There was black widows under the sink, and we used to play with them because the staff members were too scared to remove them. The black guy eventually removed it about a year after that black widow was already having children and stuff. And how do we know it was black widow? Because it was black, had the hourglass, and we actually looked it up. It's one of the things, because I had an insect book. Oh yeah, we used to go to the library. That was one thing I loved that they would do. They would bring us to the library, and I would kiss and make out with this girl, Christina Stiers, that was my buddy. We'd only do that during the library or when we got deep into the woods. On top of this, oh boy, I got to pick out books, and I couldn't really read, so I'd pick out comic books to try to learn how to read the simple stuff, and I did pretty well with, figuring out the picture with the words, having some context, and then figuring out the words, as well as the insect books, because they had maps, pictures of insects, country names, so I could try to figure out the name of the country by the syllable sounds. Also, because we're in New Mexico now, I could look up insects that were local to New Mexico and Texas, and then I could look up insects that were back in New England where I used to live. So I got to be all over the United States thanks to my mother's trafficking of me after that crime. So I got to kind of just wander through the woods with this little girl. I was a little boy, and we got to kind of wander in apple trees and find wild watermelons, and it was interesting. But I did not get an education. These staff members, like one class was camping. We just went camping. Another class we played through with Legos or toys. Sometimes they would have us just sit there for an hour with a reading book and tell us to start reading. Now, most of us couldn't read, and they didn't teach us how to read. Now, they did have one staff member that tried to help me read with another older kid. There was an older kid who actually spent a lot more time trying to help me read. It was kind of nice. He also used to play chess with me, but he left. He left about 3 months before I ended up being able to leave. And I wanted to tell my parents about this going on with the abuse, so I did once when I left. But I used to tell my parents about stuff going wrong, and they would make it worse every time. Like, for instance, I told my parents about the no classes when we first moved to Mass from Maine and Texas. When we came back, there was one school where all the students there in my class got to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And toys all the time. I mean, 100% of the time. Literally, the whole year, there wasn't one day of classes. The whole time I was there, we got to play with toys, Yu-Gi-Oh! All day long. Wiffle ball, lunch, go play with toys. Toys, wiffle ball, lunch, whatever, coloring. One time we made soap, whatever the hell we really wanted to do. The soap was made from a person who came in one time. That was kind of nice to be able to do something other than Yu-Gi-Oh! And toys. But none of this was any math or classes or anything because the teacher was actually pocketing the money. They found out later. I mean, there were so many kids in that class that parents ended up finding out and suing them, and they shut it down. So, yeah, this is something very, I mean, you have like 16 kids who didn't have an education for a year. You can't keep that secret. We're old enough where we all remember. So, anyways, when I told my mother and father that there was no classes about, I don't know, a couple months into this, you know what they did? They called the school. The school probably gave them some bullshit. I don't know what the school said. I don't know what my parents said. All I know is I told my parents, and the next day when I went to school, the teacher put me in front of class, and all the kids were asking, why do we have to stay still in these desks? We never have to sit still in the desk. Why can't we play with our toys? Why can't we play with Yu-Gi-Oh? And then the teacher sat up in the class, held me up at the front board, and said, you're going to sit in that chair quietly all day long. You know why? Because this kid, Zach, told his parents that we're not having any classes. And so, yes, you guys are going to sit there. Then she lets go of me. She sits back down at her desk, and I stand there like I'm told to for like about 10 minutes to a half an hour. Then she leaves like she normally does out the door. She just closes the door out of the classroom and lets us just be wild kids. And all the kids start just getting out of their seats, doing whatever. Then I sit down at my desk. They're yelling at me. The kids don't like me. I'm back at my desk, and they're like, how dare you tell your parents? How dare you? How dare you? And then they're all mad at me. So, yeah, telling my parents what's going on doesn't always work out so well. Like when I told them about the overdose at the doctor's. Like when I'm telling them about that there's no classes. Like when I told them about the fact that this New Mexico place was like choking me out, throwing me around, doing this to little girl. Oh my God, I don't even want to think that was happening to that other little girl. Not Christina Stiers, there was another little girl that was her little friend, and we were all waiting for her out there, and I guess she was in the shower too long, so the African American, who was big and giant, ended up going into the girl's shower, and she was screaming, and apparently he held her naked too, because you could hear her screaming because of the choking hold that he used to do around the neck. or trying to scream. We would scream, but then there would be a gargle. Then there might be a scream, and then there might be a gargle. It depends on how tight he was holding. Sometimes he would just do it over the neck, but we were so skinny you couldn't actually cut off our necks with our arms. Instead, they would just really get pulled at the socket until like you heard popping in black and blue. We're really skinny little kids. We weren't really able to eat with all the food poisoning and things going on. Now I'm a 31-year-old and I get to live in the woods thanks to my mother and father's choices. Isn't this great? Isn't this a great world we live in? Sarcastically, I'm saying. Fucking, you got children being taken from their mothers to go through this type of life. I mean, how bad would it have been if I just got to stay with my mother and grandmother? Well, how bad could it have been compared to this poisoning, giving me a neurological disorder? I mean, my mother would have had to give me a lot of alcohol and drugs to do the amount of damage that my adopted mother did. Because my biological mother made good choices. She tried. She got sober, from what I read. She actually only drinks now. She hates pills. That's all I really know about her. And she also gave me up to adoption, and she was only 15 years old when she got pregnant from a babysitter who was a grown adult in his 30s. So with all that going on, I think she made a great choice to give me up. Now, it wasn't really a choice. I got taken away from her because she didn't have any living quarters. She was living in a tent. But either way, are we really making, with all the money the state gave to my adopted family, you don't think it might have worked out if we gave that money to these 15-year-old mothers and tried to give them like a home? Like here's a 15-year-old mother home where we give them a home and we give them some of this Social Security money we're handing out to all these rich dads with attorneys. I mean, that might be a good solution. Instead of giving all this money to these kids who just have anxiety, who are 12 years old with rich daddies with lawyers, why don't we try giving it to some of these 15-year-old pregnant women? I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. I think that a 15-year-old is still young enough to be needing Social Security. And pregnant, oh, that's a medical condition for sure. Pregnancy is a tough one. But no, that would be too sensible. Helping our fellow man or trying to be a good person and just following that logic in a straight line, it's too sensible for some people because you might have to give up your money or your time, or you might have to take responsibility for your actions, or it might be tough, or you might not have to be able to drive a car. Like me, I don't drive. Oh, it makes my life so hard that I don't drive. But the alternative is to put everybody else in danger. And I don't have to not drive. Nobody forced me to not drive. This is a choice I made, and I made it based upon very, very, very good information. Like the fact that I can't throw or skip a rock without aiming in the wrong place. I'm falling down during lights and fireworks. I'm shaking. I'm falling off of bikes every so often. I'm twitchy. My leg is bouncing by itself. And that this is getting worse. And also, there's a lot of drugs and medications my mother's playing around with. So I decided it was probably a good idea to get control of my body and health and then drive. And it was, because I've had multiple seizures since, I've had multiple falls, I've had multiple uncontrollable movements in my feet, legs, toes, arms, hands. So yes, I made a wise decision there. But I shouldn't have had to make that decision. I should have already had medical records disqualifying me from driving until I'm a year free with seizures and I'm on seizure medication or epilepsy medication. That's what's supposed to happen in my cases. Normally, you get a diagnosis at the age of like 12. They work on that until you're like 18. Then, when you go to drive, you have a bunch of paperwork that says, okay, you got to be a year free from a seizure, you got to be on this medication, you got to report it to the DMV that you have these seizures and shakes, and then you get your license and you go on the road. But see, I didn't have any of that. I never got any of that because my family didn't give a fuck about my health one bit. They only cared about my mother and her Social Security bullshit with getting me health care through all these psychiatrists who were writing books and feeding into my mother's fantasy. Those aren't the proper health care. We needed neurology. We needed to be driving around. We needed to stay in the same state. I mean, these doctors can't do very much either if you're bouncing me around from Westford to El Paso, Texas, to New Mexico, to Maine, to Chelmsford, to Westford, to Chelmsford, to Maine, to Chelmsford, to Haverhill, to Maine, to Chelmsford, to Haverhill, to Lawrence, to Chelmsford, to Maine, to Chelmsford, to Lawrence, to Chelmsford, to Maine, to Chelmsford, to the street, whatever the fuck more. Don't forget about when I was born, too, there was a lot of me going through different homes in foster care. That list only starts at age like 7. So that's a lot of bouncing around, and my mother's looking for doctors that agree with her. She's not looking for primary cares or neurologists that are going to look into an overdose and my nervous system and how my nervous system has been affected, because then some of the medications will be stopped. Also, this is what the Social Security should have been based upon, is a physical disability, ADHD, and don't forget I have PTSD not only from New Mexico, but like the doctors have been saying for 15 years during childhood, no, Zach, I think there's more than just New Mexico. There seems to be more that you don't understand or you're not telling us. I said, I don't know. My mother's crazy. My mother's crazy. And that's the most I could usually get out. My mother's acting crazy and hurting me, but then I could never describe in which way. Medicines, there's lots of medicines. So, we're the ones giving you the medicine, is what the psychiatrist might say. Yeah, this is a fucked up loophole that my mother used to try to get Social Security attention. She could play doctor, multiple reasons. There's a lot of reasons why she might do this. And there's lots of reasons why I know she did this. And there's lots of reasons why she might have thought that this was a good idea. Like, for instance, they're elderly. Well, my father might die because he's 90 now and I'm in my 30s, but when I was 20 years old, my father was still very elderly. So maybe they figured that my father would be out of the picture by the time I was 18, and this would be a good way to try to keep me with my own income in my own apartment away from the family. But that requires you not stealing Social Security. That requires you honestly reporting that right health care of your child. That you got to read the side effects of the medications that you're requesting from these doctors. If you're going to request Zyprexa or Zofran or Xanax or Quantapin or Seroquel or Thorazine or Haldol, well, I know I did generics and name brand in that. If you're going to request medications like that, you should know that Thorazine is very dangerous. It can cause problems with the nervous system. You should know that Seroquel can cause depression, can cause heart palpitations, it can cause dizziness, hangovers. I'm not even kidding, it can cause hangovers in the children that take it. And yes, I was one of them. You should know all the side effects like suicidal thoughts, depression, uncontrollable movements, not being able to make bowel movements, diarrhea, vomiting, whatever. You should know those if you're going to give it to your 10-year-old. Give him a cocktail of 10 pills. And goddamn, if you're going to have a medication overdose at the age of 7 in Westford, you might want to know what medications cause that. That's how I know my mother did not have a combination of meds. I've been on every medicine in the book, and the medications I was on that day have been repeated since. My mother was lying through her teeth about this was an allergy to some medication combo, because I was literally still on that medication, and I've still taken a lot of that same medication, and my mother never put a name to what medication she gave me that day. She just said that I experienced an allergy from the medication, and that's why I lost my vision. That's why I lost the ability to feel my hands. That's why I couldn't feel my tongue. That's why I couldn't talk. That's why I couldn't feel my jaw. That's why I couldn't see out of my eyeballs. That's why when I tried to stand up, I couldn't stand up. That's why when I tried to feel the carpet, I couldn't feel the carpet. That's why my breathing slowed down on a pile of newspapers. That's why I went unconscious. And that's why I woke up with my whole body changed for life. Is because my mother said that that was called an allergy from the medication that she administered that day. She also said that she couldn't remember what the medication was. She also said to the doctor there was no need to look into it. That's very weird. And she also made a phone call that day as I was OD'd on the ground, gasping for air, trying to crawl to the newspapers. She was on the phone with the emergency people And they told her to bring me to the emergency room. She did not want to do that. She never brought me that day, but she knew there was an emergency. She knew that there was a serious reaction. And I told her this over and over, that I lost my vision. I lost the ability to talk. I lost the ability to feel. I lost the ability to walk. I basically lost all my senses. The only sense I had left is I could hear. I could hear just fine. I heard my mother say, "These people don't know what they're talking about." Ding, and hung up. I heard that part. I also heard my mother get off the couch and dial the phone as she walked into the hallway, so I could hear just fine. I could hear the beep, beep, beep. I could hear everything going on, and I could hear what she's saying. And I was able to ask her about it later in life, about these situations. And what I've been able to gather is my mother was full of shit. She caused an overdose, and she didn't want anybody to know about it. So she tried to misdirect every time she could. This is why when I mentioned it at the doctor's office, she got so white and scared. This is why when I re-mentioned it multiple times, she got more and more angry. This is why she tried to do so many crazy things like put me in ballet once when the teachers started realizing something was going on. Also, my mother also pushed mental illnesses quite heavy that didn't exist, like attachment disorder, bipolar, depression, suicidal thoughts. These things were based off of facts that she already knew. Like my mother knew that she had me on 3 medications that could cause depression or suicidal thoughts. Now, I tried to commit suicide with aspirin. That's the first ever time it was recorded on my medical record, and the only time until I was homeless living in the woods. That's the only time I try to commit suicide. That's it. All the other bullshit is overwhelming bullshit, but that time I really did. But here's the part that you didn't hear from my mother that she left out. For one, I was in trouble and I was just administered 5 medications. So it was nighttime. This is about 9 o'clock at night, bedtime. I get administered my nighttime meds. But then we have a talk. Right after I get all these meds, my mother has a talk about how I took money out of her wallet, which I did on my neighbors asking me to. My neighbor next door had some little painted things, and he called me to the window. He asked me if I had any money. I said no. He said, just take it out of your mother's pocketbook. Put it back or whatever later, or just whatever. And I was stupid enough to do it. Now, I learned my lesson about that later, that listening to assholes is not a good idea. But back then I figured, well, I'm not making the decision. He is. He's the one telling me what to do, and he's an adult. So I don't get in trouble if an adult tells me to do something like that, right? No, I'm the one who takes the full blame. He got in trouble for selling it to me. I got in trouble for stealing the money. And I never mentioned to anybody that he's the one who told me to steal it in the first place. I just took the blame. That was it. Doesn't matter. My mother and them were screaming. I couldn't get an edge word out anyways. So anyways, I did do that. Yes, I did. I did take some money out of my mother's wallet because another adult told me to. Stupid of me, huh? And this kid was only 18. He wasn't even a real adult. Or maybe he was 16. He wasn't even a real adult. That was stupid of me. At 12 years old, I'm going and stealing from my mother's purse. Terrible decision, right? I deserve a good spanking. Absolutely. I deserve a talking to. But instead, what I get is a talking to. I get a punishment like normal. I also get a handful of medications. I get administered my medications and then I go to bed. The medications start kicking in and I start crying more and more. I cry more and more. I cry more and more, but I get this sinking depression from the medication. Something is different this time. This is a sinking depression, they call it. But I don't know this at like 12, 13. I don't know this. And this feeling gets worse and worse. And then all of a sudden I get the thought, if I kill myself, this will be all over. So I go in the bathroom and I take like 5 aspirin. 5. There's a couple aspirin thinking it would be deadly. And I go back to my bed. My father checks in with me like an hour later or 30 minutes later, and I tell him that I just took some aspirin because I tried to kill myself. But I don't know why I did that, I tell him. I have no clue what came over me to do that. And they bring me to the hospital. I get charcoal, and they put it down as I'm suicidal. That's my only real suicide attempt until I'm about 20 years old in the woods, and I ended up getting frostbite on both my feet. Actually, I was 22. I ended up needing to lose my. Oh man, I went to the hospital emergency room 3 times, and the third time they said if I ended up back there, they were gonna remove my toes. And from my toes swelling up, being those colors, oh yeah, it was true. And they said if I stayed off my feet, there's a chance I could keep them, but I had nowhere to stay off my feet. So that time was also that was a real suicide attempt. Well, I knew I probably wouldn't die from it though. Took a glass bottle, cut my left arm, bled out in public, and I was also frozen half to death already. But that wasn't anything about suicide. I was dying from the cold. There's many times that I did not commit suicide. I just had nowhere to go and I froze to death, or somebody hit me over the head with a brick. I mean, I've also OD'd at age 7. Like I said, it's not the first time I've experienced death. I mean, that's why I don't think of it that way. It's not scary to me. But as far as some of these experiences I've had, the closest to death I've ever been was in my mother's care, my adopted mother's care. That's the closest I ever been. That's the closest I ever been to death, was in her hands. And still to this day, their actions are what prevent me from being able to use a shelter. If I go to a shelter, right, and I just try to live there like any other human being, I can't do that thanks to my mother and father, and I'll explain. I have the disability I've been talking about here. I shake, I have seizures, cold water makes me shake and fall down. Sometimes in the morning I can't move my body very well. Certain drugs make that worse. Some drugs make me move better in the morning, like Ativan or Triliptal, but no matter, like right now I take Triliptal in the morning and it takes about an hour to work, but that helps. So if I'm in a shelter, I first got to take my Triliptal before I can move my legs. Now I sleep with that at home. I sleep with the pills in my bed, and I keep water at the left of my bed. So all I have to do is take 3 Triliptal for epilepsy every morning, and then I go back to bed for an hour, and then I start doing leg exercises. I pump my leg up and then down. I have a water bottle I sometimes tape to, or tie to it, not tape, I tie it to it. And I try to go up and I just go down. Or sometimes I just rub my muscles. I just rub them with my hands, just rubbing and rubbing my leg muscles. And then I try to stand up. I walk 10 feet and I walk back. I keep on going farther until I can go to the bathroom. And then I go to the bathroom and I come back. I do some squats and then I sit. And then I squat and then I sit. And then I stretch until I got my movement back. And then I can walk 10 feet, 20 feet before my legs give out. And then as I move more and more, eventually that doesn't happen. At least normally it doesn't happen. Normally I don't fall, my legs don't give out, there's no numbness, because a lot of times they're very numb, or they're very weak, or the muscles won't hold any weight. This is some of the, or they shake. A lot of times I'll have full body seizures where I just fall on the ground unconscious, and according to the witnesses, I look like a flopping fish. According to the emergency room doctor of Lowell, it was a grand mal seizure according to the brain scan. So, yeah, not fun shit. Terrible shit. That's been going on for 25 years, so I have to deal with that too. And like I said, it's not properly recorded. My father and mother hid this because of the cause of it. So there's no reports of most of the stuff I'm talking about, except for emergency rooms, and I would need somebody to drive me to go to many places. Plus, my father's withholding information. Like, for instance, one of the people that could help are the doctors that worked with me in Westford and the schools I was at Westford, because they were talking physical therapy, coordination issues, needing speech therapy. But the coordination issues, when my mother put me in ballet, that was when doctors were actually hearing me speak about what happened to me, because that's when that's the nervous system. Making my voice high pitched if you didn't just hear it go up suddenly. Oh shit. So anyways, if I'm in a shelter and I can't move in the morning, what do you think they're gonna do? They're gonna think I'm being stubborn. They're gonna think I'm playing a game, and they're gonna throw my ass to the street. And if I tell them I'm disabled, they're gonna ask me to prove it, which, thanks to my mother and father, is almost impossible. Let's say I'm taking a shit. That now, most shelters require you to take a shower. You have to. I don't know why that is, but most shelters require you to take a shower. I'm fine with that, but if the room in the shower, or if the water is too cold, I might fall down. Now, that's also very common. But let's say I do it. I take a shower and I fall down. I'm now naked on the ground and I can't get up. I'm shivering and I'm about to have a seizure. They ask what's going on. I can't talk. They call an ambulance. I go to the hospital. I try to explain it to the hospital, but they don't want to listen, so they release me. Then I go back to the shelter. They want to know what happened. I try to explain. They say, do you have any paperwork for this? Do you have any paperwork on your disability? I tell them I'm trying to get it as we speak. They say, too bad, you can come back when you get it. And then I'm banned from that shelter. So this is how I get thrown out of every shelter. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm disabled, and my parents try to hide one disability while making other ones. They were trying to create mental illnesses when I do have some. I have hyperactivity, talkativeness, that's ADHD. I have anxiety, and I have PTSD. Now, my voice wasn't so much like this, but this is from the neurological disorder. This affects my tongue, my voice, my finger movements, my leg movements, my arm movements. It affects just about every part of my life. I move my thumb, my leg jerks around. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about. That nobody else goes to move their thumb and their left leg just starts jerking around. That's not common. But there's so much more than just that. And this has been going on for 25 years. You would think I would have a diagnosis by now, but that's only if I had a real family. If I didn't have other people trafficking me around and trying not to take responsibility and avoiding responsibility and taking evasive action. Thanks to those choices, and thanks to people's selfish, greedy behaviors, no, there's very little I have to present to a shelter or any place. So I'm not allowed to use shelters. I can't drive a car. I can't work a job. I can't collect Social Security. If you're thinking, well, wait a minute, you have mental illnesses, right? Can't you collect Social Security? No, actually. My father already collected Social Security and he made a whole mess of it. Oh my God, a terrible mess of it. So if I'm honest with them, it's still going to take like 20 years for me to collect. Even if I lose a leg or a limb, it would be impossible. So I need an attorney. That's the only way to get Social Security at this point. I need a Social Security attorney, and he would need to file all the proper paperwork in the proper order. There's no way I could do it. No, I've already tried multiple times. Plus, half the time, I don't have a phone or address. I've kept the phone and address for 6, 7 years now.